A very good morning to you, and thanks for joining us. You're watching Political Spectrum, and it's coming to you live on Spectrum Television. Hello from me. I am Raymond Ata, bringing you through the day's biggest news stories and events as it concerns the political space in Nigeria, top of which surrounds the continuous allegations making the rounds about purported plans to truncate democracy in the country from different quarters. We'll try to ascertain who are those behind the alleged plans to install an interim government as alleged by the Department of State Services, plus the bickering and the face-off between different political parties in the country, especially the ruling APC and the Labour Party, over the recently leaked audio conversation purportedly between Peter Obi and Bishop David Oyedepo of the Living Faith Church Worldwide. But the Labour Party candidate came out yesterday to distance himself from the purported leaked audio conversation. We'll try to ascertain how true those claims are. But let's start off with some roundup of the day's biggest political news stories and events. And we begin with the news that the Minister of Interior, Ralph Aregbesola, has assured citizens that the federal government is doing everything necessary to ensure a peaceful transition of government following the peaceful conduct of the elections. Now, the minister stated this when he announced that the federal government has declared Friday, April 7, 2023, which is known as Good Friday, as well as Monday, April 10, which is Easter Monday, as public holidays to mark this year's Easter celebrations. While wishing Christians at home and in diaspora a happy and a peaceful Easter celebration, he enjoined them to love their neighbors through acts of kindness and generosity of spirit, with the well-to-do sharing their substance with the less privileged around them. While Aregbesola further assured Nigerians that the nation is persistently on the path to greatness and urged all to positively deploy their creative energy for the full realization of the coming prosperity. Now, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, has distanced himself from a purportedly leaked phone call between him and a church cleric. An online medium had published the audio clip prompting tensions between Peter Obi's supporters and several of the political opponents online and offline. The Labour Party candidate, however, took to Twitter yesterday to reject the authenticity of the audio, arguing that he consistently maintained his focus on an issue-based campaign while pursuing a new Nigeria characterized by inclusion, justice, equity, fairness, and prosperity. Obi denounced what he described as present attempts by the All Progressives Congress APC and the APC-led government through some government officials and agencies to divert attention from the alleged manipulation of the recently concluded polls in the country. In a related development, the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress AAC in the February 25 election, Omoyele Sowore, has accused his counterpart in the Labour Party, Peter Obi, of lying about his phone conversation with the renowned Bishop David Oyedepo. Recall that the viral video, which has caused controversy on social media, had alleged that Peter Obi had asked Bishop Oyedepo to mobilize support for him from the church. Well, the audio also claimed that the former governor of Anambra State had stated that the 2023 presidential election was a religious war and had asked Oyedepo to reach out to the Christians in the southwest, Kwara, Kogi, as well as Niger State. But in a statement yesterday via his verified Twitter page, Obi finally denied the conversation, stating that the audio call was fake and doctored, and also claimed that there is pressure for him to leave the country. However, reacting to the developments in a tweet via his Twitter account yesterday, Sowore said the Labour Party's presidential candidate had lied about his phone call with Oyedepo after he had sought the pastor's extraordinary help. Now, here's the content from what he tweeted yesterday. How does a liar reply when he or she is told, "Liar, liar, pants on fire"? Now, they simply say, I don't care, I can buy another pair. As Peter Obi just completely lied about his phone call to Bishop Oyedepo, who went on seeking extraordinary help, even though his top aides, including Patutomi, have all fessed up #revolution now. Tweets that have since gone viral and is generating further controversy on the social media space. Now, staying with concerns around the Labour Party, a federal high court in Abuja has issued an order restraining the national chairman of the Labour Party, Julius Sowore, as well as the National Secretary Farouk Ibrahim, and 2 others from parading themselves as national officers of the party. Others stopped from parading themselves as national officers are the National Organizing Secretary, Clement Ojukwu, as well as the Treasurer, Oluchi Opara. Justice Hamza Muazu issued the restraining order while ruling in an ex-party application argued by one James Onoja. In an application, Onoja told the court how the restrained national officers allegedly forged several documents of the FCT High Court to carry out unlawful substitutions in the last general elections. Now, among the documents were the receipts, the seal, and affidavit of the court to carry out criminal activities. Now, the senior counsel also tendered several documents confirming to the judge that the chief registrar of the court wrote the Labour Party to disown several documents used for the alleged criminal activities by Sowore and 3 others. Onoja alleged that following the indictment by police investigation, the 4 people are to be arraigned in court, adding that warrants for their arrests have already been obtained. Well, let's wrap up with the news that former President Olusegun Obasanjo has written to the chief clerk of the Central Criminal Court in London to temper justice with mercy over the conviction of former Nigerian Deputy Senate President Senator Ike Ekweremadu. Ekweremadu and his wife, alongside Nigerian Dr. Obinna Betta, were recently found guilty of attempted organ harvesting of a Nigerian trafficked to Britain to provide a kidney for their ailing daughter. However, Obasanjo, in a letter addressed to the chief clerk of the court, said even though Ekweremadu's action was condemnable and unacceptable, it has contributed this quarter to the socio-political development of Nigeria, adding that his punishment should consider his past records of good deeds and the plight of his ailing daughter. Well, not a surprise that Olusegun Obasanjo is largely referred to as a man of many letters, as posited in a book that was recently published on the several accounts he has personally written about, considering the events that have taken place in Nigeria, past and present. But let's stay on the present, because the biggest issue still making the rounds is the aftermath of an alleged leaked audio conversation between Bishop David Oyedepo and Mr. Peter Obi of the Labour Party. It has been trailing in recent weeks, and Mr. B has finally responded to the purported conversation, and he says it was doctored, fake, and doesn't represent a true picture of what he would ordinarily say. What are the things he is saying, and how connected are they to the claims that there are plans to install an interim government in the country? We'll be joined by Citizen Matthew Kofi O'Connor, founder, Open Forum. He will be joining us to bear his thoughts on these issues when we come back from this time out. Do stay with us. Political Spectrum will continue.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by across them. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My Lord, sorry, my Lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're watching Political Spectrum live on Spectrum Television. As always, connect with us on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and feel free to head to all of our socials, especially our social media handles, and on YouTube where you can subscribe to follow up for more live feeds. Welcome back. This is where we get to bring you up to speed with the day's biggest political news stories and events. And still to come in the program, a very polarized country is what President-elect Bola Tinubu would likely meet shortly after inauguration on May 29, as it happens that the result of the just concluded presidential and governorship elections on February 25 and March 18 respectively highlights the sharply divided state of Nigerians, especially along religious and ethnic lines. How will he address these concerns when he comes into office? We'll talk about that later on. But let's look at concerns leading up to the inauguration itself on May 29. The Department of State Services, DSS, have alleged that there were plots to install an interim government in the country and truncate the democratic process. This claims, of course, not largely disconnected to the recent claims by the federal government that the Labour Party presidential candidate, Peter Obi, is stoking up unnecessary tensions after claims that he made inciting comments in a conversation that has now been leaked, claiming that he solicited for support and canvassed for votes from the leader of the Living Faith Church Worldwide, Bishop David Oyedepo, where he allegedly described the elections as a religious war. Well, a lot of persons had asked me to Peter Obi and Bishop Oyedepo to clear the air on whether or not there were any iota of truth to the purported leaked conversation, something he finally did yesterday via his official Twitter handle. But Mr. Peter Obi has distanced himself from such claims. But let's come to the major roots of the discussion this morning, and that is whether or not the threat to install an interim government is real, as claimed by the DSS. Well, joining me live in the studio as no stranger to Spectrum TV and Political Spectrum, citizen Matthew Kofi O'Connor, founder, Open Forum, joins us live this morning. A very good morning to you, MKO, and welcome to today's program.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here once again.
It's good to have you join us as well. We're counting down to the end of President Buhari's administration come May 29. We're not going to focus largely on what Mr. President has done in the nearly 8 years of his tenure, but it looks like the last days of his administration appear to be the most exciting ones since he became president, because he has a small matter of ensuring a seamless transition of power from his administration to the next. But this has been riddled with disturbing reports about a plot to truncate the transition of power from one civilian administration to the other, when the DSS came up with the claims that there were plans to install an interim government. The last time we heard anything close to this was roughly 30 years ago, during the ill-fated Third Republic of Ernest Shonekon. I wonder, having been an active player during those heydays, have you seen anything close to what happened in 1993 likely repeating itself in this era?
Thank you very much for having me, and I want to greet viewers out there. The antecedents of what happened in 1993 is not the same with what is playing out in 2023. In 1993, the result of the elections were partially announced and was halted by the government in power, not the electoral body, not because of an outcry by citizens, but it was an intentional halting. The election result in 2023 has been announced. However, with so much outcry by citizens that some things don't add up, and the incumbent government is the party that has benefited from the announced results. So the settings are not the same. But there are some things that look similar. Some of those things have to do with the candidature. In 1993, Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, MKO Abiola, was a Muslim from the southwest. He picked a Kanuri man from the north to be his running mate, who was also a Muslim by name Kingibe. And the difference between then and now was that people, both Christians and Muslims, refused to even recognize that Moshood Abiola was running on a Muslim ticket. It wasn't really an issue. In fact, some people never even realized that he was running on a Muslim ticket because, one, the focus was on him as a person. He was seen as very pro-people. So pro-people to the extent that The man had traditional titles from all over the country, and he was a philanthropist par excellence, and nobody compares to him. In terms of sports, he was called the first pillar of sports in Africa. So people did not recognize that division. As much as possible, that there were some people that are very conscious, but the level of consciousness now is different. And in 2023, the APC candidate who has been declared winner by INEC is a Muslim from the southwest, and he also picked a Kanuri from the north to be his running mate, who happens to also be a Muslim. And then you fast forward that to the last, in fact, 2015, where the current president, Muhammadu Buhari, was said to have been under pressure to run with Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu on a Muslim ticket, which was resisted by members of his party. And he himself also owned that up to say that he saw that it was impossible to run a Muslim ticket in Nigeria, so he had to nominate not just a Christian, but a pastor, in the person of his former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Lagos State, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. And by all reasoning, people felt it's impossible to think of anybody running on a Muslim ticket in this era. But that is what the APC, under Asiwaju holding the flag, has done. But be that as it may, the issue of annulment, the issue of interim government cannot arise now. Why? Because there can never be an interim government if the government in power does not have an eye or does not desire such. It's impossible.
Well, that's what I'd like to take you up on immediately, because while it appears in the views of Nigerians and the international community at the time, just as history has told us, that it was, or it took the decision of former head of state Ibrahim Babangida to annul the elections, we know it was also premised on a purported court judgment delivered by then Judge Dahiru Saleh. I don't know if you've come across that name. He has severally also said he should be blamed, and he took responsibility for annulling the 1993 polls and not Ibrahim Babangida. Well, we know he could just be saying it to save face or maybe shield the former president, but it equally took a court judgment before the elections were annulled, meaning even if IBB was behind the annulment of June 12, 1993 polls, he did so after a court's pronouncement. So who's to say that history may not repeat itself again in this era if we have a court's pronouncement that declares the last or the just concluded elections as marred with irregularities or maybe not fulfilling constitutional requirements and call for fresh elections. On that premise, it could mean Bola Tinubu may not be sworn in come May 29, and that could be the views that people like Dati Baba Ahmed has been holding for some time now, which unfortunately has been translated to mean treasonable comments by those within the rank and file of the federal government.
Like I said earlier, the scenario in 1993 is not the same. The military junta, headed by General Babangida, had no tenure. So there was no issue of, oh, if they don't leave office by this time, this is going to happen. And when he stepped aside, he clearly used that term that he was stepping aside, which was a contentious statement. Why do you step aside? That means you're gladly going to come back by whatever means. He stepped aside and handed over to Shonekon and left behind somebody he knew was also very power hungry in the person of General Sani Abacha, who after about 3 months overthrew Shonekon. So fast forward now, the tenure of President Muhammadu Buhari is going to end on May 29. And we have a constitution. We also have the Electoral Act, which everybody are supposed to abide by, including the electoral body. Now, governments at whatever level, if they want to do a dirty job, they look for people that do dirty jobs for them. And somebody did a dirty job in 1993. Something that was called Association for Better Nigeria, which from I don't know if that was corrected, the impression was corrected, was not even a registered body. They're the ones that went to court. Because there are people who are good at doing dirty jobs, and when governments want to achieve whatever they want, they will work with evil, they will work with the good, the bad, and the ugly to get what they want. So this is not the scenario. For the much that I know, no individual or association has gone to court to tell the court there was massive rigging, if this is called rigging, or INEC did not adhere to the Electoral Act in the announcement of the result of these elections. And you cannot flout the law and then expect people to close their eyes. No group has gone to court over that outside. Those are contested elections, which is their due legal right, and also the right of citizens, law-abiding citizens, to go to the election tribunal. So the only matters in court has to do with those who are aggrieved, the contestants and the parties. In this instance, the Labour Party and Peter Obi, their candidate, the PDP, their candidate, Atiku Abubakar, and maybe some other parties. Are the two major parties that have actually gone to court. And what are they looking up to? They are looking up to the court, looking at the cases, the issues they are going to bring up. If the court, in its wisdom, decides that, yeah, there were constitutional breaches in the course of conducting the elections, nothing stops the court from deciding that, oh, first of all, there are questions of, was the candidate of the APC validly nominated? Was he qualified to have stood election? Was his deputy qualified to have stood election? Does he have some allegations or accusations or past convictions that, if looked into in the eye of the law, could have disqualified him? Did INEC adhere to the electoral guidelines? Those are questions to be answered by the court, and that court is the appeal court, which is a tribunal for the presidential. The appeal court seated, full appeal court. I think they have about 5 justices. It's constitutional court. They are the ones who sit as a tribunal. At the state level, tribunals are set up before you now move to appeal court and then the Supreme Court. But for the presidential election in Nigeria, the appeal court is the first court of instance. From there, you go to the Supreme Court, which is the apex. If the appeal court, which is the election tribunal for presidential election, looks at the issues brought forward and say, okay, Asewaju did not meet the qualifications to have contested, or his vice, who is said to have bought 2 forms for both Senate and as vice president, he was not qualified. And if you don't have a validly nominated vice presidential candidate or even governorship candidate, you don't have a ticket to run on.
Do you think the timeliness of the whole of this matter is the crux of the issue? Yeah, the concerns from many is that how feasible would it be to cancel on elections that ushered in President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu if he's already sworn in as president? So I was listening to the former NBA president yesterday, and he said the Courts of Appeal and indeed the Supreme Court, should it get to that stage, need to fast-track this judgment on the elections before the inauguration of May 29. Because let's assume that the case lingers beyond May 29. I mean, would the president at that time want to respect the Supreme Court ruling that would likely say, let's cancel the elections that did not meet constitutional requirements? We've already seen firsthand how a president can disrespect a Supreme Court ruling with the Naira redesign policy drama we saw when the president disobeyed the courts twice. It took him a 3rd time before he eventually backed down and bowed to pressure. So following that antecedent, would it be easy to have a sitting president want to have elections cancelled, new ones which he would personally supervise, as a matter that he is an interested party?
Well, there are some antecedents that we just have to disregard because they cannot represent us. For anybody not to respect, not to honor the decision of the Supreme Court. In fact, any court, it's a sign of indiscipline, and that person is undemocratic, that person is law-abiding, whosoever is involved. So none of those people should be our standard. We are in court, the matters are in court. And my singular regret is that in the build-up to the issues about the new Electoral Act, which was signed into law, 2022 Electoral Act, some of us have thought that there will have been provision that all electoral matters should be adjudicated upon before swearing in, so that once these people assume office, they just hit the ground running. But unfortunately, and for whatever, we don't have that. We still have the 180 days time frame from when election is conducted, when the matter is filed, to when it has to be concluded. And that also includes up to the Supreme Court, which will make this matter have every elected person sworn into office. Remember, it's not only the presidential election that has been contested. There are some state elections that are as controversial and as funny because of the kind of result and what we even saw happening in those various states, to say this one should not be able to stand. It doesn't matter who has been declared winner. The country or the people cannot be at the mercy of somebody because you want to be president or you want to be the governor. So everybody should keep quiet even when there are very clear things. It's impossible. That era we have passed. So the court can sit and say we cannot attend to other matters within this period. Other cases we will have to wait. Now, what is the main case? The main case is the presidential election. And how many of the parties are in court? Whatever number that they be. You do the initial things, do the adoptions, and let the case begin. You are looking at constitutional matters. A number of those contesting this election are not going to prove that there was not substantial compliance with the procedure, which is always very difficult to nullify elections based on rigging. But there's something that is worse and very easy to determine now. Was the process adhered to? You don't need substantial whatever spread to show that. Beavers will speak for itself. This is number of accredited persons. IREF will show when were the results transmitted, when were the results announced. Were results announced before you could even collate the result? No. Even in primitive days, I understand. Was it in Liberia that one of the worst election riggings in the history of humanity? They had, I'm not quoting the exact figure, like 15,000 registered voters. Do you know how many the score that was used to declare the winner? 250,000. Yes, and the person became the president. 15,000 registered voters in the country. The result announced was 250,000, and he became the president. That cannot happen now. So if we have bypassed a law, no matter what you have said, no matter who you are, you can't represent who we are. So it is very possible that the appeal court, which is a tribunal or the court of first instance for presidential election, can look into this matter and make some consequential decisions within a matter of 3 weeks to 1 month. And then it goes to Supreme Court. And you know, at those levels, in fact, I have done election petition. Tribunal takes time. But once you move from tribunal to the appeal court, only 3 instances. I'm not a lawyer, but I've done election matters representing the party that I was a the deputy state chairman at then. Once you go to appeal court, you go and file, you go back for adoption, and you go back to get the judgment. 3 appearances. So how long can one keep a matter that does not require you coming today, coming to approve, No. So it's very possible. We have a crisis in our hands. And like you heard the former Emir of Kano, like Sanusi, you heard what he said this week? Nigeria has never been as divided as this, even under the Civil War.
That's interestingly a matter we'll look at later, but let's stay on the issue of the threat to install an interim government. It's somewhat heating up the polity, and the tension across the country is equally stoking. We did not, maybe you would say we envisaged this if the elections did not go the way many people expected. Within the week, the federal government has thrown shades at the Labour Party presidential candidate. It first started with the leaked audio conversation between him and Bishop David Oyedepo. And everyone has been asking Peter Obi to come out and clear the air whether there were truths to, the contents of that audio. Well, yesterday he said he was not a party to that conversation. It was fake. It was doctored. Now, that's a matter, of course, for Nigerians to judge, because I'm sure even as opinion is largely divided within the Labour Party itself, some persons say there could be truth that is actually Mr. Peter Obi talking to Bishop David Oyedepo. Well, now that the man himself has come out to say, I'm not a party to that, do you think it's enough to quell the tension that has already been building, especially now that he has said there is a pressure for him to leave the country? And juxtaposing that with the call by President Buhari, the APC and the likes that aggrieved parties at the just concluded elections should head to court if they were not satisfied with the outcome of the elections. And this is a position Mr. Peter Obi has taken right from the World Press Conference he initiated a few days after the polls, when he said he would reclaim his mandate in court. And that's what he's doing. Why do you think he's being criticized now for deciding to seek legal redress in court as constitutionally backed?
There are persons whose stock in trade is to see what they can do to cause problem, to cause crisis, because they are the prime beneficiaries of the crisis. Let me take you back pre-election, before the election. The Naira change, the petroleum, scarcity of petroleum products. You heard what people like Fani Kayode said. This issue of interim government, overthrow of government or whatever, started from spokespersons of the ruling party. Governors of the ruling party, led by Nasir El-Rufai, went to court to challenge the federal government's decision on Naira change. And they clearly said that it was a ploy to stop their choice presidential candidate. These were members of the ruling party speaking against their party. Even the candidate himself, that's why Jibola Ahmed Tinubu said severally that these people, they want to frustrate him. They don't know how to think. They don't know how to do. They cannot stop him. So if these things were said and done by either PDP or Labour Party, they will have been branded. But what happened? Somebody like Obi said, please, let's bear with government. These policies will over time pay off. And that was, pulling the carpet off people that were looking for something to hold people like him for. Before the elections, the videos are there. The governor of Kano State, Ganduje, in a meeting with almost religious leaders, Islamic religious leaders, which from the audio and what the statement they made, about 70 different groups or thereabout. What did they say? They say this election we're going into is a must. This another 1993 Muslim ticket that they must consolidate. That is a jihad. They said that it must not be frustrated like it happened the last time. Nobody said anything. And people were just saying, are we normal? Somebody is saying this with the microphone. After elections, people expected the youths, because they attribute the media movement to youths. It used to be 4 people in a room tweeting when there was no voting units on Twitter, until they saw that some opposition candidates had to even adopt I'm obedient and all of that. That's on the lighter side, but very serious matter. They did not find youth on the street. Nobody to kill. The ones that go out are harmless. They were just saying we need a mandate to be returned. They were not even doing it on behalf of Labour Party. So, with all things said and done, the only thing some persons could see to hold on to want to ascribe to be inciting insurrection or committing a treasonable act is an audio, and the highest thing they get from there is, yes, daddy. Yes, daddy. Obi has said that that audio is doctored. Talking about religious war, that term had been used by even others. That incitement had been done with people who are still in government, and they have not denied the video. So, would the best that some persons can get, I'm not speaking for Peter Obi, I'm an analyst, is, yes, daddy, with the kind of voice that Obi has never used before. Somebody that, like somebody that was crying, somebody that is frustrated before the elections, with the high spirit that you saw him and all of that.
I did ask that question as well, why it would take him up if allegedly it was Mr. Peter Obi in that audio. What does it make any sense to appeal to a cleric for votes on the eve of the elections when he could have made that appeal long before the election?
No, whatever be the case, I tell you sincerely, it is a very embarrassing, those that call it revelation or leak. You are talking, you call this leak. So the ones we've been seeing people really do, what are those things? If some result could be announced without final collation and we have heard the final result, what could that be? For instance, the Minister for Information, after seeing the kind of report by international observers and local observers and the opinion of international media, could still go out there to say the kind of things he said, and then to defend INEC, who have come out to say they had problem, very serious problem, and you are saying they had no problem. This is the fairest elections in the history of the country, and Mr. President has kept to his promise. It's like some persons will just maybe speak words into the air, either in forms of prayer or incantation, and many people wouldn't know themselves, so that you can say anything, they will take it. That outing is an embarrassment even to the country, because the things that are on ground and the admission of the actors, enough that INEC has announced for the first time in history. I've never heard INEC announce their budget for litigation, neither the number of lawyers they are going to use. But INEC knows that this is not just going to be a case between contending parties. They will have to struggle to be able to say, this is what we did. I've heard a conversation somewhere. I'm not the first to say this. Somebody said on the radio conversation, I think what we need to do going forward is to amend the Electoral Act. INEC must be a party in a case to come and prove how the results, or how they conducted the elections and the result that they brought out. Not parties just to come and face themselves. Whereas you, the principal actor, I think was it Stalin or Hitler, who somebody made a statement that it's not the person who votes that matters. It's the person who counts. You can decide to count anything. You can,
Joseph Stalin.
Joseph Stalin, yes. It's as critical as that. So the Electoral Act should be amended to make sure that INEC or NEC or whatever name that the electoral body will be called in Nigeria going forward must be a party to prove that what they did was according to law. We cannot run this country the way we are running it, because the impression we have given to the younger generation is such that if you don't have a criminal record, if you're not a part of a gang or do what is prevalent, you may never move forward.
I wonder if this also gives, you've talked about the younger generation,
yes,
whom all of these activities are likely to rub off on.
Yes.
Does this give credence to the views of those who say that the entire 2023 electioneering process appears to have been staged. When you look at the chronicle of the events, leading from the drama around the electoral act itself, where it appeared that it was more about, looking into activities of political parties and try to tell them what to do, which was against constitutional provisions that political parties should be allowed to do what they want. But it seemed like the Electoral Act was more or less targeted at controlling what happens in every political party. And it was seen to have been something sponsored by the APC within both chambers of the National Assembly. But the timeline of that till after the election seems to suggest, including the narrow redesign policy, that this may have all been an orchestrated plan to doctor the elections to the way perhaps the APC or the federal government wanted it. And that's why they're still defending in totality the outcome of this polls, even when it has been greeted with large dissatisfaction across many quarters.
This conversation will continue for a very long time, and I expect those in the academia. The 2023 general elections was not even on party basis. Anybody who will beat his chest that Ahmed Bola Tinubu won because he was an APC person, that person then go against the vice president, go against the Senate president, who was even the policies of government and the achievements of government to campaign. It has never happened. And you accuse them directly. You've made the fuel to be scarce, made money to be scarce to Nigeria, or even in their state, or even where they have their secretariat. And they are proud to even say so. On principle. So he had to run against the way you need to give us a ticket, to have presidential ticket for whatever reason. The national chairman felt maybe I'm not going to win, so let me stay here and make whatever I can. It has a capacity to get whatever he wants, and he got the ticket. Tinubu ran as because they said APC people that they were supporting Atiku, and that was even for me. If you know people, Tinubu is a force. Is a force on it. This was done to favor this party or in the court. Remember, there's the court in the land and there's a court. Everybody wants to go to God now. It's impossible of Nigeria or in form of a state. Oh God, do unto me as I'm doing to the people of my state, or I'm doing to this land. They can't pray such prayers. Somebody who is a judge at whatever level who feels saying that as a spiritual man, because we want to move disenfranchised by whatever measure. I should be able to seek the drag in court. Allow those that have gone to court to go to court. Those.
And on that premise now, you gave a vivid, interesting. So on that premise, you seem to believe and think that some courts have time to deal with post-election concerns. Now, I want to present this scenario of power from Buhari to President-elect Tinubu. Do you think it's a case of the true meaning of what it means? So it seems like a wrong connotation, maybe in May, June, July, or whenever. Yeah. Now that would mean President Buhari May 29. Now, should President Buhari leave office come May 29 row until a substantive president has been sworn in, which would be after justice of Nigeria should come in and the constitution backed? And that's why I'm asking, is it just a case of people, with the army? You made that statement before the polls.
Yeah.
To stay.
You've nailed it. But you must know the mindset of my disturbance is that the DSS or SSS with clear evidence handing them over to the was born over to Governor Mefele about sponsoring, and the statement by the federal government through Lai Mohammed Yunusa on the 4th and send out to Islamic clerics. Nothing is a greater threat when the current president has few coppers were killed. I think that was in Benue. They were butchered, and the video was there. He was telling his immediate lieutenants that power is not service restaurant. So, some persons, not just grabbing ethnic nationality, as if it was specifically. The video is there. We saw what give two parties to come and examine records side by side. So the worst threat is the kind of on their bosses. Come as it is now, you find in some states a commissioner is a contractor. Religious leaders, traditional rulers are given cool, and they cannot even deliver on what they steal because vision work on it. But it doesn't happen. Stand it. So when you make this kind of statement, you have incited them. So the real people who are say it is people who are doing things that are intentionally trying to, paint. I'm not saying we put these issues in perspective and call such people. There are some analysts who have put some things online that use, that kind of thing, and then definitely are doing. They have done and they are currently doing. Ton said spokesmen of these political parties.
Let me go for a refresher course on.
Not just refresher course. Some of them, they will never. They did that made them to even have a name. So what do? Send them
existing divisions within the country along religious and ethnic lines that were accrued to him. There's still the small matter of whether or not their chief argument that he did not win the more divided than ever since the annals of the nation's political history. Maybe 30 years ago, we had similar scenario acclaimed, as opposed to what we're having today. So division is wide. Religion and ethnicity seems to be the origin. Even when the president of the country himself seems to be positing a biased stance in most of the comments that he has made himself.
Mr. President hardly talks. And like you've heard him say severally, he's very eager to leave Sowore. And he said when he leaves, he's going to go back to his village. He won't even come to Abuja. He said so. He's eager to leave. Why? He's fulfilled. Has it? Nigeria, I agree with Sanusi, is more divided. A number of states are more divided than when their chief executives made those states. Forget about what somebody will tell you that I'm leaving the state better. Has not rubbed off well on the administration. We must agree on that. Outside of that, we will never be able to, if you don't know their problem, if you don't understand a question in the exam, you cannot answer it. And somebody pretends as if you cannot think. It's one thinking for you. It's very sad. And we have gone past that stage. So some people that want us to believe that we are there, it is traditional rulers, religious leaders, they do not have views on state and national issue that will look different from the position being held by the chief executives at those levels. That's the challenge. And anybody that has a contrary view is seen to be anti-system. And that is insulting to the souls of every person. You don't have to be a royal father before you are listened to. You don't have to be a political office holder before your views should matter. But what do we have? People don't want to talk. This thing is bad. Keep quiet. It's their turn. And the next turn that is coming, like one of my senior friend, the prof, was always say, is a cascading mediocrity. We get from one mediocrity to the other. I bet you, as we are getting in, they are finished elections. Some of those that will sail through the courts, good. But you will find people that some of them must have been armed robbers, real armed robbers. Some of them must have been involved in one terrible crime and the other, who will succeed to stay in office. Their communities knows them. We have a saying in our place. Say, Wodo, you don't know. Whatever somebody is, the community knows. But why do we throw up our worst as our best? Why do supposed leaders keep quiet? Why do some people like us, who are just giving to humanity, being objects of attack? I'm referring to even myself. You face issues too much. You are against the system. You will never make headway. You will not be. I'm talking about personal experiences, and then you go to somebody that's supposed to be a voice, will be respected, and the person is even worse than even hoodlums. Worse. That's what made me to even say that hoodlums are more productive than even those that send them to do what they do. Because give somebody power now, at whatever level. Oh, this is your office. You have to take care of this jurisdiction. yeah, this is a mandate, and you give the person budget, and he does not deliver, then a hoodlum gets instructions, go and scatter that place. Don't allow them to vote. What do you get? He goes there and scatters the place. Nobody votes or cuts away the materials. He has delivered. Sometimes at how much? 1,000 naira, 5,000 naira. So we have a society where people that are running on budget, some of them with very wonderful titles, are very unproductive. They are the problems of society. And until we are able to face them and tell them that God gave us our roles to play. If you are coming with a particular mold to put society, to put people, so that they will not fulfill the calling of God in their lives, you are wasting your time. You and your mold, you will stay there till you rot. Until we are able to do that, society will not move forward. We cannot praise people that have failed and believe that we have done well. We have not done well. And not just in praising. What contributions have we as individuals made that could be alternative to what they are doing? Some people don't come with alternatives. Yes, this is what the sitting governor or president is doing. It's not good. What have you brought? Some don't bring. They just criticize. But some of us, we bring, and we bring lavishly. Those that should say, oh, this is quite encouraging. Please, we can do this thing this way. They find you as a threat. So Nigeria, we need to not just educate the youths and adults who are afraid to speak out, but they don't accept what is going on. It is to indoctrinate our children. We should go beyond education and enlightenment to indoctrination. So that when you see somebody going along the road, you can buy that person or you can sway that person just because of your position, you know you're going to meet brick walls. And that is what people like us are doing.
Let's wind down on the conversation now. Tinubu's win clearly marks one of the most lowest thresholds secured by an elected president in the democratic era. In fact, since 1999. I mean, when you have the losing candidates scoring as low as 6.9 million votes to come in second, it speaks volume of what we saw at the last elections. But here's the big question now. Going forward, there's still a good chance Bola Tinubu could be sworn in come May 29, as the Constitution provides, having been declared the winner. And the presidency has assured us over and over that this is the target. They want to transfer power to him. He has a bigger task of uniting what is now a very divisive country, with most persons saying, well, that's it with my voter cards. Never am I going to come out and take part in the electoral process because we've been lied to for the upteen time, and the 2023 exercise was just thrown in our faces. So you have people who are dissatisfied with the state of things in the country. You have people who hell-bent on leaving the country because they feel Nigeria is nowhere to be. I mean, the tax ahead of Tinubu or any other president for that matter coming in after President Buhari is humongous. How would you advise him or any leader at whatever level? We have some governors who are equally faced with such scenarios in their respective states. What will it take to unite what has now become a very divisive country, especially along lines that we did not emphasize? Maybe we emphasize, but we always guarded against them, religious and ethnic lines.
I feel differently when you talk about the vote margin. Differently in the sense that we had the Naira crisis. And I must commend Nigerians. People traveled. Some people trekked. A particular fan of mine, a friend, his money could not take him to his community. So he paid halfway and trekked the rest to go and vote. And when you also see that the videos, I was on election duties with you in the governorship. I was on election duties with another sister station in the presidential to analyze, because at the grace of God upon us, a lot of Nigerians were not able to vote. Why? Intimidation. People had thought materials would not be carted away. Materials were still carted away. So those that waited to vote, they could not vote, they could not be captured. So the outcome, that result does not reflect the true state of even those that voted and those that went there to vote who could not vote. That is one. Two, it is possible that anybody will sit at the end of the day after the court judgment at all levels. But let's look at the governorship cases and the presidential, which is most talked about. You need to know that when people are hungry for leadership, if they find it, it does not matter who gives that leadership, whether the person was a former convict or was a this and that, they will very appreciate. Nigerians are very appreciative people. So the division is not to the extent that no matter what the incoming government will do, we will not see it. I bet you it is lowest hanging fruit for Nigeria to be repositioned. But you will not also do away with the fact that some persons have seen other people as nobody in terms of region, in terms of religion. Look at the National Assembly. Are you aware the number of people who are Muslims who want to be Senate President or who want to be Speaker of the House? And from their mindset now, the President is a Muslim, the Vice President is a Muslim, nothing stops them at their level. That is the mindset. That was what some of us were trying to avoid. And you hear somebody say, religion does not matter. Who told you? It is a mind game that nobody should play with you. So there are some errors that are to be corrected. And whosoever will sit, I bet you in 2 years, Nigeria can be transformed. As long as the person will be ready to restructure the country for the practice of federalism. That's very important. Fight corruption. Are you aware that people are not talking about the economic woes of this country? World Bank has said, I think 2022, that by 2024, our entire earning as a country will not be enough to service our debt. That is real. Nobody's talking about that. Unfortunately, the same World Bank is granting Nigeria a facility to come and do palliative for fuel subsidy to be removed instead of giving us a long-term, very low-interest loan to build refinery. Anybody who talks about fuel subsidy removal without our refining product here is an enemy of this country, whether you be an institution outside the country or you are or you call yourself a leader here, because you don't control the economy of the world to say we have oil, we sell the oil, we now bring it in at no. Okay. We are above this, for God's sake. We are just above this.
Oh, interesting conversation indeed, we have to say. Well, President Buhari's position as far as the entirety of the elections were concerned is that it was an exercise that was free. The results, according to him, revealed democracy's ripening in Nigeria. And he said, never has the electoral map shifted so drastically in one cycle. Whatever it meant about that, we'll try to revisit that matter next we have another chance to come up here. But thanks so much for joining us, and many thanks indeed to Citizen Matthew Kofi O'Connor, founder, Open Forum, for joining us again to oblige us with your thoughts this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much as well. And that's the size of Political Spectrum for today. Keep it with us. We'll be back again tomorrow, God's willing. Join us again if you can. And Blyden Okem is up next with Business 360. But from me, Raymond Ita, and the rest of the crew, thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.